Hi, everybody. This is Alpha. I'm the host of Stories from Behind the Counter. Before we get started in any of these episodes, I just wanted to give a little disclaimer. Some of these stories are not exactly family friendly, especially not very child friendly. Some of them do use some strong language. Some of them do talk about some rather vile things sometimes. Others is just not exactly something some people might want their children or anyone else around them to hear. Not exactly public friendly. If you have a job in general, you know what I'm talking about. Some things that happen in life are just not public, perfect conversation. So, with that in mind, please keep in mind where you're listening to this, who you're listening to it around, and how you're going to listen to it. Also, if you have any stories that you would like to share with me, please send them my way. I am always up for more stories. I only have so much as my own. So if you have anything you want to share with me, please feel free to share them with me in my email account. Send them to workwithalphag@gmail.com. That is workwithalphag@gmail.com. One last thing I wanted to remind you all about is please make sure you're following me. I am not just on one platform. I am on Spotify, Patreon, Castbox, Podbean, and Buzzsprout. So please, if you have any of those, Patreon is probably going to help me out the best, and hopefully later on it'll be able to help you guys out as well. For $1 a month, you'll be getting ad-free episodes, as well as later on I'm hoping to be able to do Q&As, just be able to talk with you guys, one-on-one conversations, group chats, whatever. So please make sure you're checking it all out. Let's get into the episode. Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Stories from Behind the Counter, and as always, I am your host, Alpha. I really want to thank everyone who's been listening and everyone who's been subscribing to Patreon and just checking me out on any platform that I'm out on. I really do appreciate it. One thing I did want to talk about real fast is the fact that in every single episode at the beginning, you will hear it has the same disclaimer. Yes, I am keeping that on there, just in case someone new comes on and hops into a brand new episode and has no idea what they're getting themselves into. I don't want anything to ever be a surprise, and I feel like the disclaimer at the beginning really helps with that. So if it bothers you, I do apologize. Skip ahead like 2 minutes, and that'll be the disclaimer and the intro music, and you just get right into the episode. That being said, let's get into today's episode. Today's story is going to be from an old family friend of mine. I knew him all the way from, I want to say, junior high. And when I was growing up, he used to tell me all sorts of different stories from different places he worked. Well, this one is about when he worked for the state DOT, Department of Transportation. We're going to name my friend Big Boy because, well, he was a big old boy. At this point, it's late 2001. Either late September, early October, and he's working in the area of the Hoover Dam. Obviously, at this time, the whole entire U.S. is in a bit of a panic mode, thanks to the events of 9/11. For those who aren't familiar with the area, or with the basic rules of trucking, the Hoover Dam is on the border of the Arizona-Nevada border. And usually, when you're going over the state border, commercial trucks, from my understanding, stuff like semis, anything that delivers goods nationwide, state to state, whatever, they all need to stop at weigh stations, get checked to make sure their vehicles are okay to stay on the road. They, I'm sure, check for illegal activities, drugs, stuff like that. You know, it's just standard procedure for trucks. They've got to stop, get checked, get weighed, make sure everything's on track. But apparently, a semi driver had skipped one of the turnoffs to weigh and check his truck as per law. At this time, they didn't have the what's now called the I-11 bridge that bypasses the Hoover Dam. So pretty much all the traffic had to drive over it. The DOT was tracking the driver pretty much immediately once he passed the station, They were on high alert, obviously. Like I said, 9/11 just happening. They're afraid it could be another possible terrorist attack, or it could be anything. They're not taking any chances. So the DOT is prepping stuff to stop him before he can hit the dam. The FBI, the DOT, local PD, sheriffs, everyone rushes over to assist as quick as they can from both states. Somehow, Big Boy was put in charge of standing in front of the line of gunmen to try and get the semi to stop without lethal force, if possible. He was told that if the truck passed a certain point without stopping, to just drop to the ground, and they would all open fire on the truck and take it out. So Big Boy walked out to the area he was instructed to stand at, and as the semi was driving up the dam, all the truck driver saw was a row of flashing lights and guns pointing right at him. Luckily enough, the guy stopped as quickly as he could, at least for driving a semi at essentially freeway speeds, and he finally came to a stop just before he hit quote-unquote no going back zone, as Big Boy called it. Supposedly, the driver wasn't paying attention to the pull-off area and didn't see it, and he turned down his radio that connects into dispatch, which from my understanding is a huge no. You don't do that. But according to the driver, he was just trying to rush and make his deadline, and he was tired of dispatch bugging him. I don't know if he was arrested, but he was given a good few fines for a few different things, from my understanding. Needless to say, if the man didn't lose his job, I bet he never made those mistakes again, though. Now, personally, I don't know a whole lot about the workings of places like the Hoover Dam or the Department of Transportation, and honestly, I always wondered how much I could believe out of this guy, so take this story with a grain of salt. I'm not sure how much of what he told me is true, and I honestly may not even be remembering it right, but it was a very key memory that always stuck out, and thought it was interesting. So if anyone has any knowledge of that incident or how something like this would work on either side, please get a hold of me and let me know. I'm curious. Educate me. Alright, so that being said, I think we're going to move on to the next story. This is the time that someone drove into our drive-thru window on July 4th. I was working at a fast food chain, and I'm working the front counter. There's 2 other people that are working the drive-thru. We've already shut down the first window. Of course, it was standard. 2 windows, you usually pay at the first one, pick up your food at the second one. But it was late, and it was very slow since it was 4th of July. Well, the whole store is dead. We're pretty much just like, screw it, and everyone stepped outside, had a smoke break, watched the fireworks show, at least as well as we could from where we were. And when it was done, we went back inside waiting for the post-show rush. Of course, within minutes, people started pulling in. We take the first order, and we tell the customer to pull forward to the second window. Well, after about a solid minute goes by, the customer still hasn't come up to the window. We haven't heard anything else on the drive-thru mic, even though we can see on the camera that there's a little bit of a line. So one of my coworkers sticks their head out the drive-thru window to see if they can see anything, see what's going on. Within a second or two, he pops his head back in and calls for the manager on duty. He had a little bit of a panicked tone, but at the same time, he was trying not to laugh. He calls for the manager, is like, dude, you need to come here. So the manager pops his head out the office, and he says, well, what's going on? My coworker says, that guy ran into our back drive window. It looks like a cop was behind him, and that's what's blocking the drive-thru. That's why no one's coming through. The manager turns around and says, excuse me? My coworker repeated himself, said, well, he ran into the back drive window. So, of course, the manager looks around the corner, looks out the window, and sees the truck just kind of chilling there in our back drive window. Now, mind you, he obviously didn't hit hard enough to come through the wall or anything. We would have noticed that. But after the guy made his order, he tried turning and apparently turned a little too tightly, and he ran into our brick wall and messed up his bumper on his truck. Now, even though it wasn't that bad, he didn't do any damage to our wall or anything, it's still one of the last things someone wants to deal with, especially on a holiday at any job. So needless to say, my managers just started shouting and cussing a little bit. He calls our general manager to inform them of what's going on. Well, the manager goes outside to see if the cops need anything from him and how much longer he thinks they'll be blocking the drive-thru. We ended up having to place someone outside for part of the night to redirect people into the parking lot so that they could come in the store and order some food if they wanted to. Sadly, a good few people just decided to pull out of the parking lot and find somewhere else to go. It was right after the fireworks show. A lot of people were hungry. I'm sure plenty more of them were just drunk and didn't want to be near a cop, so most of them just left. It turns out the guy who crashed into the building was drinking and driving, and was so drunk he started nodding off at the wheel as he was turning after he ordered his food. So that's how and why he crashed into our wall. So, of course, the guy is placed under arrest. The cop has to wait for a tow truck to come, get the drunk guy's truck, so that they can all get on their way, and we can continue business. I personally never heard anything else about the situation, so I don't think my manager had to go to court, as the cop got pretty much everything on his dash cam anyway, since he was right behind the guy when it happened. And none of us saw it. It was just out of our camera's view. So, I don't think anyone had to deal with it, luckily enough. But that was definitely one of the most interesting 4th of Julys I've ever had. Alright, so moving on to the next story, this is going to be about the great pandemic of the toilet paper forts. This was happening in a lot of retail places, anywhere that pretty much had a toilet paper and paper towel section, especially if it was a whole giant aisle of shelving and stuff like that. People were making forts inside of the toilet paper and paper towels. So I believe it was around 2019, this big old trend was going around. Kids, adults, everyone was doing it. I worked at a big old grocery store at the time, so of course we had to deal with it. The sad part is, though, I'm not going to lie, some of them were rather elaborate and kind of impressive. But at the same time, when you're working there at one of these places and it happens multiple times a day, it gets kind of annoying. So, like I said, I'm working at one of these big retail stores, and we have a nice big area for our toilet paper and our paper towels. Big racking that you could fit probably a good 8x10 rug in, and still make a wall of toilet papers, whatever walls that blocks people's view. Only problem is, at least 2 to 3 times, if not more a day, we would hear kids giggling and climbing around. Sometimes we'd catch them before they get too far. Other times, we'd find full rugs laid out, camping chairs, battery-powered lanterns, an ice chest, food. And like I said, it wasn't always kids. Sometimes it was adults doing this too, so that made them even more elaborate. But I remember one time we ended up having to call AP. They ended up having to call the cops to get a guy out of the racking, and we charged him for something we call grazing. For those of you who don't know what that term is, grazing is when you grab food or drinks and consume everything while walking around, and you never pay for it. I believe the guy racked up a bill about $100 of stupid stuff, like Lunchables, an ice chest, ice, stuff from the deli, all sorts of stupid shit. Sadly, it was a very, very common thing. Please, people, even if you think it's funny, just don't do it. It's really annoying, especially when you have to clean it up every time. Thank God I think that fad has faded out, and I don't think it's a big problem anymore. I know, at least where I work now, it's not. But speaking of grazing, that brings us to our next story. I was still working over at the same big retail area. I was in the produce department at the time, and one night I was working, and an old man comes through driving one of those electric wheelchairs, and he drives through the produce in the deli area. He grabs some fruit, a potato salad, he parks right next to a trash can, and just starts eating. Well, he gets about halfway through the potato salad, and he throws it away. He takes 3 bites out of the fruit, and then he throws them away too. He starts picking out more stuff, and all of a sudden I see my ASM. We called them Big Red. Big Red came over, and I explained what I just saw, and Red looked over, saw the old man take a bite, and they ran over to the guy. I hear Red telling the old man, "Hey, I've already warned you about 3 times. If I catch you doing this again, I'm going to have to call the cops on you. You need to stop doing this. You can't just eat stuff and throw it away halfway through and avoid paying for it." At this point, I'm thinking in my head, okay, you've caught him and warned him 3 times before this? I don't care if the man's 100 years old with cancer. Call the damn cops on him. Either he doesn't care, or he's so out of it in one way or another that he needs somebody to help take care of him and keep an eye on him so he doesn't get himself into trouble like this. But Red just sat there arguing with the man about what he was doing and why it was wrong, and he acted like he was so totally shocked that he couldn't try his food first. At one point, I hear him yelling at Red, saying, "I'm not going to pay for shit food. I'm not paying for it just to find out later that it tastes like asshole." To which Red asked the gentleman to leave before she called the cops. He did end up leaving, but he was cussing up a storm all the way out. But he still proceeded to come in for about a week straight, pulling the same thing with every manager he could. I'm not sure if someone finally called the cops on him, or if he just got so annoyed he stopped coming in, or whatever may have happened, but after that 1 week, I don't remember seeing him. Anyway, moving on. So this next story is about all the times I had to herd people out of our store because it was closing. Now, we all know there was a small handful of stores, one in particular, there was a few, that were known to be 24-hour stores. Well, even before COVID, in some of the more rural areas, especially the ones that had a lot of high theft, and it just didn't work out very well, they stopped doing the whole 24-hour thing. I know the store I was working at in particular, our biggest night of profit after all the bills were paid, all the associates were paid, blah, 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 the store profited $3. Not 300, just 3. So obviously they decided, no, we're not going to be doing the overnight thing anymore. So at this time, I'm a CSM on the front end. I'm closing the store down. Our location closes at midnight. I personally, anywhere I work, like to give announcements overhead. I do it over the intercom every 15 minutes, informing everyone that we're closing. That way people have a clear understanding that they need to get their stuff, check out, and be on their way, so that our employees that aren't overnight associates can go home. Well, of course, this doesn't always work. Sometimes we have elderly people who are hard of hearing. Sometimes we get people who are completely deaf, can't hear the overhead announcements. Stuff like that. That's no big deal. I don't mind going around and being like, oh, hey, just so you know. But the ones that got to me were this one family in particular was the worst at it. It'd be the last 10 minutes or so of the shift. I've already made all my announcements, and I'm trying to make sure people are getting on their way out the door. It doesn't even bother me as much when it's different people every so often. But like I said, this one family in particular was the worst. For 3 months straight, this family would come in around 11 p.m. and shop as long as we'd let them. One time on a day off, someone wasn't making the announcements like I would, and they didn't bother to have management go and help them around the store and round everybody up. So these people are still shopping around in their electric scooters until 1 a.m. We have no more cashiers left at that point. They all leave at like 12:15, 12:30. As soon as we realize, okay, last customer is gone, bye-bye, clock out, go home. Well, management had to go and open up a register, check her out, and try to get her out as quick as possible. We've been closed for an hour. The last customer before now was gone at least 30 minutes ago. So they tried to explain to the customer clearly the store closes at midnight, and that moving forward, they need to make sure they were watching the time and listening for the announcements. So it became standard practice to go around and hunt anyone in the store. All associates had to do this. And whatever closing management had to make announcements, whether that was CSM or above. Well, this family keeps coming in pretty much every single night, same time, and they roam around forever. I'd go around after making my announcements, and I'd find them, usually in the frozen section, like they had a routine of where and how they shopped. It was almost every time I'd catch them there. But after the first month or so of me and other members of management trying to kindly remind them every time that we are no longer a 24-hour store and that they need to hurry up, they started to try and say it, we can't force them out, to which at that point my assistant manager of the shift said, "Let me put it to you this way. We've been telling you for over a month now when we close. You have until 12:15 to get to our registers. Otherwise, we're calling the cops, having you 86, and you will not be getting any more stuff from our store ever. We're not fighting with you. Just get to the front now, or you're not getting a damn thing." The following week, That particular ASM went on vacation, and no one else would help back me up when this family came in again. So when they got back a couple of weeks later, the assistant manager, the first night back, followed them around all night. As soon as we saw them come in, he just started following them. When I made my final "we're closed" announcement, he turned and said, "I'm timing you. 15 minutes. Get to the front. Check out and get out of here. I'm calling the cops." They didn't believe him. So they kept shopping. He calls the cops, and 10 minutes later, the husband and the wife team of his family is taken out in cuffs, and we have to put all of their food away. I personally never saw them again, but, I mean, we tried to be nice. We gave them a while. They wanted to just use and abuse the system and try to be treated like royalty when they were really just a family of gypsies trying to live in our parking lot. Sorry, guys. Not sorry. Anyway, I think we're going to go ahead and move on to the next one. So this story is from when I was working at a hardware retailer. At this point, a customer comes in, and he's asking for a few pallets of flooring tile or cinder block or something that was really heavy. We get him rung up, we tell him where to park, we find him some people free enough who can use the forklift that could load up the customer real fast. We grab the pallets, come around the corner, and the customer has what looks like a 20 to 30 foot trailer attached to his truck. This trailer has no side railings, so makes it really easy to load it from the sides. Cool. Sadly, as we're looking at this thing, the tires don't look that great. And the more we look, the frame itself doesn't look like it's rated for maybe more than 3,000 pounds. And, well, each pallet of block or tile or whatever it was that they were buying is a few hundred pounds a piece, minimum. With the amount of product that he ordered, this load was probably at least 5,000 pounds. So we didn't think he was going to be able to do it all in one load. The trailer itself had enough room for the pallets, but just did not look like it was strong enough to hold that much weight. We tried to warn the customer, but he said it'd be fine. He does this all the time. He knows what he's doing. We just need to follow his exact instructions. Yeah, we've heard that one before. Whatever. To a point, we still have to follow the customer is always right. So, he's directing us where he wants each pallet loaded in the order he believes will evenly disperse the weight so it won't damage his trailer. As the guy on the forklift was grabbing the last pallet around the corner, we started hearing a bit of a creak from the trailer. I already had a bad feeling about this, but I still brought it up. I was like, that's kind of scary sounding, bud. He says, it's normal, it's fine. He's just got one more to go. I got this. So the forklift driver comes back around with the last pallet, and he lowers it very slowly and carefully as possible. But of course, like we tried to warn the guy, as soon as we backed the forklift away, all of the tires on this trailer popped all at once. The customer stood there and looked at his trailer, looking like he was trying to come up with something to say that doesn't mean, "Oh shit, you were right." So the guy looks up after a second and says, "That's fine, we're just going around the corner," and hops in his truck and starts driving off, with all flat tires on his fully loaded trailer that, again, mind you, is about 20 to 30 feet. The trailer is obviously rocking and fishtailing everywhere. He gets close to some parked cars and just looks like it's a very scary situation overall. But he kept on heading out and actually got out onto the main road, which is very heavy in traffic most of the time, and he got out of sight. Now, I Google mapped it. I was curious. The literal closest house to the store I worked at is at least a little over a half a mile away. So even if it was just around the corner to that closest house, that's a half a mile with all that weight and popped tires. I never heard of any car accidents in the newspaper the next day or anything, so I'm guessing he made it at least mostly safe. But man, some people just don't think. I really could not believe that's what he wanted us to do, but we had to do it. Customer knows right. Alright guys, just a few more stories for you. So this one is from one of my friends I used to work with. Her name is going to be Indy for this story, just because she always wears a little hat, reminds me of Indiana Jones. And she could be just as crazy as Indy. Indy says, "I was working in the garden center at a retail place, pretty close to closing time. These two guys came in and made some comments about how pretty I was and other stupid guy bullshit that they usually say as they were walking away, but they continued inside. I'm just thinking to myself, yeah, whatever. I didn't think much about it, just went back to cleaning, doing whatever needed to be done. After a little bit, those same guys came back out, and before they even got to me, they yelled all throughout the garden center, "Come on, baby, you're coming home with us tonight." Well, thank God there was another coworker out in the aisles within earshot, but not eyeshot. But as soon as he heard them yelled at, he came bolting around the corner and he yelled at them and told them that they needed to go, and he chased them off. He was very heated throughout the rest of the night. So a little bit later on, I tried to make him feel better. So I went up to him and I told him, "Hey, don't worry about it, honey. They would have probably just returned me within a few minutes anyway." It made him chuckle a little bit and calm down a pinch, but he was still pretty upset about it. And I was just very thankful he was there. This next story is also from Indy. Indy says, "I am working as a head cashier at this hardware store. There was a customer that came in that wanted to buy a shower door. She hadn't ordered it or anything online. She just came in. She wanted the door. But another customer had just ordered the very same shower door over the phone. The problem was, we only had one of these in stock at the store. I don't remember everything that led up to this, but eventually the guy that ordered it over the phone got there as the lady was trying to buy it, and they started arguing with each other. Eventually, we had to call the manager on duty to try and defuse the situation. They both started not only arguing with each other, but with her as well. After a little while, the ASM got kind of tired of it, and she tried to calm them down, but they kept wanting to fight, no matter what she did. Both customers were convinced that they would be the one leaving with that shower door today. The female customer ended up calling the local PD to say that people were trying to steal from her and that we weren't doing our jobs, blah, 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 and that they had to come and handle the situation. By the end of it, the police officer told both of the customers, after he listened to everything, that neither one of them are going to get the shower door, and that if they didn't leave peacefully, they'd both be going to jail. Luckily enough, thanks to the cop, they both left without incident and the shower door got put back on the shelf. And on that note, I think we're going to move on to the last story here. This one is actually from a friend's husband. He says he was working at a gas station out on a highway pretty much in the middle of nowhere. Well, one day while I'm at work, I see this semi-truck getting ready to pull into our gas station. No big deal. We're set up to help big trucks. But for some reason, the driver decided to park her truck on the divided highway, right in the turning lane to get into our parking lot. So she's pretty much parked in between the oncoming traffic. It's only meant to be a turning lane or a thoroughfare. It does have a stop sign, but it's not a parking spot. Well, anyway, she came in and she was shopping around for a bit. Maybe went to the bathroom or something, I don't know, but I know she was in there for a while. She finally got all of her stuff checked out, did whatever else she had to do, and ran back out to her truck. She starts pulling away from where she's parked, which again is on a divided highway, and she just starts driving, pulls right out into the highway and hits a car. And then a second car hits her and her truck's trailer. So what does she do? She naturally says, "Oh, fuck this," and starts turning onto the highway instead of going into the gas station and starts fleeing the scene of the accident that she just caused. Now, luckily enough, Highway Patrol got her a few miles down the road pretty quickly, but that was a hell of a thing to watch. No idea why she parked there, no idea what possessed her to pull out the way she did and then just try to run after a 3-car accident, but gotta love people. And on that note, I think we're going to call this an episode for the day. Thanks again for listening, guys. Obviously, I try to keep everyone's identities safe so that they can be protected so there's no backlash from any of these companies or anyone else for any reason whatsoever. So for everyone sending in their stories, I thank you. Whatever I call you on the show is all you will ever be known as. With that being said, I want to give a big shout out and a big thank you to Denise Esparza for the artwork. She's the one who did the little thumbnail that you see when I upload all of my episodes, and I do look forward to working with her for any changes in artwork that I decide to do later. If you're interested in seeing anything else and more artwork that she does, you can follow her on Nisi Art on Instagram. That's NEISSE_ART on Instagram. Also, big shout out and a thank you to Nivation. He's the one responsible for the music you hear at the beginning and the ending of the episodes. If you wish to follow him and see what else he provides musically, that is Nivation. Spotify is the only platform that he gave me to shout him out on, but I just wanted to make sure he got the credit for what he did for me. I really do appreciate everything you guys have done for me to help me get this show started and to keep it going. Thank you guys. I really honestly could not have done this without you. For everyone else, thank you again for all your stories. I hope that you guys are enjoying this. One last reminder, please do not forget to check me out. Pretty much anywhere you can find a podcast, that's where I'm trying to get to. Obviously, the biggest ones I'm going to be on are Patreon and Spotify, but check me out, see where you can find me. Patreon will be the biggest help for me. And as I'm pretty sure I've stated before, that will also help you guys later on. I'm hoping to be able to do live Q&As. I'm hoping to be able to do conversations, one-on-one chats, group chats. I don't care. Maybe like some of the other people I've listened to doing podcasts, we can even make trips out of this and just make it a community. I just want to have fun with this. So I hope you guys are enjoying it. And I hope you can help make the community I'm looking to make. Thanks again, guys. This is Alpha signing off. See you next episode.